Good afternoon, everyone. It's a delight to welcome all of you to this closing function of our 9th Connect Karo. This is the 5th day, the last day of this Connect Karo series that we've had over the whole week. And for many of you, you would know that Connect Karo is our flagship event. It has been our flagship event for several years. This is our 10th year as WRI India. And the reason I call this the 9th edition of the Connect Karo is last year we could not do this. Because of COVID, we could not do this last year. Traditionally, we've been doing this as a face-to-face event, an offline event. And last year we could not do it because of COVID. This year we decided that we would do it as an online event, even though the COVID was going on and a face-to-face event would have been not very desirable. But our experience has been that when you do an online event, you get many more people to be able to participate. So this year, the participation was really good. We had a lot of eminent speakers, and it's really been a delight for us these last 5 days, listening to very fascinating discussions on a whole range of topics. So that's why, it's been a really fascinating week for us. And for this closing ceremony, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Suresh Prabhu and Mr. Godrej. You've been with us on all our Connect Karos. It's always been a privilege to listen to you, listen to your ideas, and we look forward to doing the same this time as well. But just a little background on what we've done over the last 2 years while Connect Karo has been, while the COVID has been going on. The happy news is that we were initially worried whether we would really be able to keep up the pace of our activities. But I'm happy to say that not only have we kept pace, we have grown significantly during this period. I think as an indication of the value that think tanks like us bring, even in situations of this nature. We have worked with multiple governments during this period, supporting them on COVID mapping, supporting them on their COVID response activities. We've taken up a number of new initiatives as well, particularly from the cities program side. Our efforts on electric mobility have scaled up hugely. We've taken up a massive program on green hydrogen, rather in the deployment of hydrogen. We have taken up a very interesting initiative on looking at an economic geography approach to urban planning, so that the master planning that happens in cities has a good kind of a vision behind that master planning effort. So we've taken up an economic geography approach to planning in the expectation that this would feed into good master planning. We've taken up work around rural development in a much bigger way, landscape restoration work that we've taken up in Madhya Pradesh. We've taken up work on food loss and waste in India. We hope to come up with a very interesting report on that. We've taken up big work on improving energy access. That means it's not just connecting various villages or connecting various villages which the government system has done, but how can we use renewable energy as a way of ensuring reliable power in rural areas, particularly for the agricultural sector. So a whole range of new things that we've been able to take up despite the COVID. And that's why we are really celebrating our 10th year. It's been something very satisfying for us. And it's even more satisfying that both of you are there with us at this event today. So with these few words to begin with, I would like to pass it on to Mr. Godrej, who's not only the chairman of Godrej and Boyce Company, but we are privileged to have him as the chairman of WRI India. He has been our constant guide, support, mentor. Anytime we've needed some help, we've reached out to him. So it's really the strength of your support that has brought us so far. And Mr. Prabhu, you've been with us every time we've needed some support. You've been so much of a support and so much of a help for us. It's really your encouragement that has kept us going and thriving all this while. So with this, let me pass it on to Mr. Godrej. He will introduce you and then get into a conversation. Over to you, Mr. Godrej.
Thank you, OP. Greatly appreciate the type of work and the vast expanse of work that WRI is doing now in India. And so as we approach our 10th year, this is quite remarkable. And Connect Karo has really established itself as a premier uh, conference to talk about not just about cities, but also about how our economy can develop as a result of that. So I have the great pleasure of having Mr. Suresh Prabhu as our guest this evening. As you know, Mr. Suresh Prabhu has been a member of parliament uh, and a former cabinet minister. He's been elected 6 times as a member of parliament, and he was holding 10 portfolios as a former cabinet minister. And Suresh, of course, is a chartered accountant by profession. Uh, and his constituency is in the southern part of Maharashtra, which is the Rajapur constituency. And so let me say that, Suresh and I have been collaborating on issues to do with environment and energy and access and just transitions for many years now. And I have had the privilege of working with him for a long time. Uh, we do believe, all of us in WRI especially, that that India, is on a growth path. The economy is growing. As the economy grows, there is always going to be a demand, not just on resources, but also on increased use of power and increased use of resources, transport, etc. And all of these are critical for us as we talk about decarbonization. But it is also very important from an economic point of view. And at the same time, it's also about people. And it's about people and how they are going to transition in this new economy. And over and above that, we've had these 2 years of COVID, where we've seen the type of stress that many of our migrant workers have been put to. So it is not an easy time for us. We know that in order to grow and to provide employment and opportunity, we need economic growth. So my question to you, Suresh, is that in the global context, the world is sort of recovering slowly from COVID. Some countries are doing better than others. But at the same time, we are seeing the economies come back, employment come back. How do you see, the way that India, not just through the COVID period, but looking ahead of us, how do you see it developing from this perspective?
So thank you, first of all, Mr. Godrej and the team, OP, Madhav Pai and all others for celebrating 10 years. A long time, but actually you have achieved even much more than the number of years that you have been around. So congratulations for that. And I'm sure your Connect Karo program has connected WRI to many people, but also connected many different dots on different diverse policy issues together to come out with some sort of a unified thinking on many of these issues. So congratulations for that. And as my dear friend Mr. Godrej just mentioned, I think he has been providing leadership to many institutions, but more importantly to many issues. And he has been at the forefront of driving them, putting his entire energy behind them, building coalitions, and actually coming out with good policy options. So thank you very much for doing all that. Congratulations on your long journey of 10 years. And best wishes for the even more number of years that you'll spend, and you'll achieve even more than what we have already achieved. So one very important point you're asking, and that is something which I think, what happens is normally in normal day-to-day life of people, we face a particular problem, and then we want to address that problem. And when we are addressing a problem, we are suddenly faced with some another problem. And then a human mind works on finding out which is more urgent, not more important, which is more urgent. And then we get into solving that other problem which we think is more urgent. And in the process, the real problem which we're trying to deal with get relegated. Just imagine climate change is one such issue. I remember globally, there's a lot of euphoria, a lot of interest, a lot of action-oriented thinking just before the 2008 financial crisis. And then came the crisis, and then everybody started talking about saving banks, saving something else, but not saving the planet. And now a similar situation has arisen, that because of pandemic forced economic closures, activity stopped. So people felt first they want to deal with pandemic. So they were all working on how to deal with the virus through vaccine and many others. And then suddenly, even in the US, the former president was always saying what is important is saving economy. Not just he was not alone in the world. There's so many others with of the similar opinion. So there was a fight between virus and economy. And those were saying that very staunch supporter of economy were saying we don't care for it. Also, some people came out with hesitancy to deal with such issues, wearing masks or taking vaccines. But as a result of that, the real problem that the world was facing, and which we are facing even today more than in the past, is a climate change problem that got little relegated, and the fight started between virus economy. What to save first? As a result of that, people are now thinking there are only two issues: proponents of saving economy and opponents to the virus and the vaccination, other intervention that are necessary. Everybody is forgetting that small little virus has caused so much of havoc. And if the climate change happens, how can we deal with it? It is beyond anybody's capacity. Just imagine now that we are looking at economic cost of dealing with pandemic. And you are saying that if I don't put lockdowns, then economy would suffer so much. If I put lockdowns, economy will suffer. If I don't do it, economy will benefit. But can you imagine? This is so measurable, so you are doing it. How much is the cost of climate change related losses that economies will suffer? And you are asking a more pertinent question, is the people. When we are talking about all this, where are the people? What is their priority? What is the priority in the public policy for people? How are you going to deal with them? As you correctly said, the people have lost jobs. The migrant labor in particular in India suffered a lot. What about them who had nothing else except their hard work that they can put to earn livelihood? And that livelihood itself under threat because of climate change and because of the carbon that is in the atmosphere more. Because either you are in tourism, that will get affected. You are in travel, that is going to get affected, many others. So point you are asking me is a very important thing, that how do you make secure a future through reducing carbon? Eliminating carbon is something is not even probably desirable because some carbon may be necessary, but at least decarbonization, making less carbon in the atmosphere, is something which is doable, desirable, and essential. And therefore, to do this, you have been working on this, and particularly your work in urban areas is so important, because urbanization is going to be unfortunately, because I'm saying unfortunately because Mahatma Gandhi had said develop a villages and then probably we don't need urbanization as much as we need today. But because it is going in that particular direction, it looks like unstoppable. So now in that context, the only choice we have, we cannot stop urbanization. Then at least you can deal with the urbanization in a sensible way by bringing out good transportation, by coming out with buildings which will not be emitting carbon as much as it is possible in normal source. So I think what you're doing is important. Now, from Indian context, I think if we don't follow this path, we will suffer economically, we'll have huge social challenges, we'll have a tremendous stress in the society, and I think that is all avoidable. And that is avoidable with some sensible ideas which you all generate through such programs. Last 5 days, many ideas have come up. And each of these ideas is practical, doable, has been done somewhere or other in the world. And if not, we are also not only coming out with good ideas, but we are also discussing bad ideas which other countries have been promoting or doing today, and how to avoid those bad ideas. So you are doing both, learning, unlearning, good, adopting and embracing good ideas, encouraging people to do that. And also, as O.P. Agarwal said in the beginning, you are also doing this economic geography planning. You are also guiding the policymakers, giving them new tools when they do urban planning, etc., as to how they can avoid it. So I think, Mr. Godrej, in particular, I want to appreciate your contribution, not just in WRI alone, but to several institutions which have been working all the time to make common people's life better. We don't realize the importance of linkage between policy and common people's life. If we do one wrong policy initiative, it will affect the human life for probably long time to come. And the cost of recovering from that is even higher. So why not learn the right ideas at the right time? That is what WRI is doing. And that's why this Connect Karo program of last 5 days has thrown up so many new ideas. I hope and I wish we could adopt them too. And see, all this is coming out from what perspective? It is, if we protect common man's lives better, it is a national interest. If we try to come out with better policy, it's a national interest. So all this is actually, right, all these ideas are coming up to secure our national interest better. So I think I really welcome this. I congratulate you, and I wish we can work together on this in the years to come.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Prabhu. You know, one of the things that has got very much highlighted in these last 2 years is the relationship between COVID and health issues, including air pollution issues, and climate decarbonization and the economy. And I think, very often when we talk of the health risks that people face, we don't look at this in a holistic way. And I think we sort of ignore this at our peril, because we know that unless people are healthy and if they cannot be productive, it's very difficult to make our economy work. How do you suggest that we, bring this topic out in a more acceptable or in a better way for the common people also to understand, this importance of this subject?
I think there is absolutely, if you ask me, the number one priority for any right thinking policy to be implemented or to be framed, I think creating public opinion is extremely important. And public opinion, I'll just cue yesterday only one magazine called Powerline, which is completing 25 years. And this is the premier magazine in the power sector, who came to me to ask me about how the power sector reforms which I had initiated has been, what is your vision on that? So I was making this point yesterday only. So it is playing on my mind that any policy to succeed, you must have public opinion. We had 1,500 road shows for power sector reforms. And of course, for some other purpose, which me and Jamshed, we always on the same page, but not always. This is one example for interlink of rivers, where there was some difference of opinion. Obviously, rightly so, but Jamshed's opinion was right. That we had 5,000 road shows. Why I'm saying this is, unless you create public opinion, you don't create a constituency. And in any society, and particularly in democracy, if the stronger the constituency, better is the chance of the success of the policy. And to create that constituency, then the buy-in happens. We must therefore create it. Now, how to do it is very important. I think it's an effort which we have to keep putting in all the time. There is no silver bullet that we can fire and can get the results. So, but what you are doing, even with WRI, is actually a step in that direction. Because once people realize, and luckily, one good part of this pandemic is the focus is back on public health, which not only in India, but even in all the OECD countries, the focus was never on public health. In fact, the richer the country was, they felt that we can withdraw from public health significantly, except, of course, UK is shining example. NHS has been one of the biggest backbone of your UK's healthcare system, which is public health. and of course some Scandinavian countries. But otherwise, even in the US, we felt that private companies or private sector can take care of health. And health is private concern, not a public concern. But that has changed. And that is one part. But more importantly, the people have started realizing that health is more important than wealth, because even in pandemic we could see that. And I think in that context, putting health and carbon, the linkage between the two, I think can help us a great deal. Because what we are inhaling, how it damages our entire system, how the cost of, and also to public health, the cost is going to go up significantly if you don't address it. So just imagine the decarbonization or low carbonization can result into saving billions, and probably if you take at the world, probably trillions of dollars. When you say trillions, depends upon the time frame. But in the next few decades, we can save that much of money only by decarbonizing. So public health itself, which is the primary concern, and each and every citizen of the world will be affected. This is one thing about carbon, is that whether you are rich or poor, will get similarly affected, like it happened in case of pandemic. Everybody was affected. So I think this is something which we must try to portray and convey. And this is something which we are doing. This is something really good. And I think I hope we continue to do that.
You know, there's an organization that you were the founder chairman of, and which has also completed 10 years. And the CEO of that organization wrote an editorial a few years ago that the only time that people think of air pollution is when, you know, you have that period of crop burning and there's a heavy amount of smoke in the air, and the rest of the year nobody thinks about it.
Absolutely.
And but so this I think this is the real crux of the issue, you know, is that we have these significant events. You know, you could have a flood, you could have, you know, drought, you could have all sorts of things, but we don't seem to look at this together. That, you know, what do we do that will affect this part or that part? And we know that with climate change, you know, the weather is going to get more severe. It will have more rain, more droughts, you know, all of that will happen. So how do we get a public policy also to understand these issues, that in everything that we do? You know, I'm reminded that when Mr. Biden came in a few months ago, you know, he said that climate change is going to be an all of government policy. You know, everything government does, we're going to look at the lens of climate change. How do we get our policymakers also to think in those ways?
It's a very good question. I think, and one of the point that you mentioned yourself, how we can take it forward, is public opinion. But point is how to create public opinion. How to reflect that public opinion to policy making is another challenge. One good part is what you just mentioned, is the President Biden's leadership on this issue. Because of withdrawal of US from Paris Accord was a huge setback to the whole debate on climate change. He's coming back on the table is actually a very, very positive move. And as he correctly mentioned, he's saying that it is not just one department issue. It is not just Secretary John Kerry's issue that he's going to go around and talk about it, but it's going to be the entire government of US is going to be preoccupied with that. I think one good part is that countries are realizing it in some way. For example, the second largest economy after US is China. And of course, China may be already bigger than US. It depends on how you calculate. But Chinese suffered so much this year because of floods and others. So they also must have started realizing it. So one good part is that the two big emitters and the two large economies at the same time, there's a relationship between economy, size of economy and emission also. So I think if they start working on it, probably this should also create a sort of a buzz that is necessary and to create it. But we should not wait for them to do it. And then it should percolate down to countries like India and others so that they will act on it. To create that public opinion, I think we must sensitize the media, must sensitize the bureaucrats. I think that is very, very important. We must sensitize the even politicians. I think we must keep doing that as and when it is necessary. But I think it also needs some sort of imaginative ideas. Fortunately, the social media is now very active and is less expensive than the mainstream media. So if we can work And this is what I think all of us must put our heads together and find out how even COP26 actually. I'm going to UK. In fact, in the next few days, I'm going to Europe and going there. I'm likely to meet them. I'll tell them, why don't you allocate some budget? You talked about billions of dollars. Whenever they come, they will come. But at least global public opinion building can be done through a much, much smaller budget than what we are talking about is billions of dollars. And probably that will help a great deal for both mitigation and adaptation. So I think that's something is one idea. Uh, all of our institutions, I think we can create. I remember some years ago, there is a network called CAN, Canada Action Network. They had invited me to Canada, and this was an umbrella organization of several different NGOs who are working on not just on climate change, but even on social issues. Some of them were trade unions. I was surprised, but they had come under the umbrella of CAN, and the CAN had invited me because they wanted me to talk publicly, and I was interviewed by many important newspapers as well as TV studios, top programs, prime time programs, because they felt that India's voice in terms of action to be taken by Canada might help Canadian policymakers to do this. This was one such effort. I think in India, we should create such umbrella organization, loose organization. They each will maintain their own identity, but there will be something like Climate Action Network of India, so that and all as many organizations as possible, and we can bring them together now thanks to social media easily. That itself will ensure that we send a similar message to our own constituents all the time, and through that probably we can even build a better public opinion. I'm just thinking aloud. I thought one of the ideas.
Yeah. You are from the Rajapur constituency in southern Maharashtra. The constituency is right by the sea. So obviously, it has also been part of the Konkan region. You have the mango fruit and you have the fishing. And and you have mentioned many times, the type of stress that you see in your own constituency, and what can we do about it? And the other point also is that because you are also from your constituency is from a rural area, the use of Marathi or whatever regional language is prevalent in any particular place is the only way that we can communicate. We all depend too much on English. How do we change this? How do we get the narrative of rural communities, fishing and mango orchards, but do it also in a way that it is understandable for those people in Marathi or Orissa or whatever it is that language we need.
It's a very important point. In fact, I was there just a few days ago, over last week actually, in Konkan. And I exactly made this point that the fishermen are suffering, the farmers are losing their crop, the youth are not getting jobs, and the west coast of India, which is not just Maharashtra, Gujarat, but the entire west coast, has been receiving the huge cyclones, which used to be happening more on the east coast before. But last 3 years consecutively, this is happening. And the east coast is not been spared. They are also getting it. But west coast, in addition to east coast, it is happening. So exactly the point I was making to them. Now, what you're asking me is, how do you communicate? So I think, I'm just taking my earlier statement forward. Then if you can create a network like this, you can even make it state-specific networks, in which, because in Maharashtra itself, the coastal areas language is different than the people who speak in Vidarbha, though the Marathi is common language, but still the local dialect, Konkani. So what we can do therefore is, if we can bring, and there are many institutions who are working at the grassroots. Unfortunately, what they lack is kind of umbrella support. So if we can make an effort to make a national organization, not organization, but a network, followed by state chapters and even regional, region means within the state, intra-state, I think that is one effective way of doing it. And I was surprised that a traditional fishermen organization which came to meet me, when I told them that, they exactly appreciated. They said, yes, we have been seeing this because our generations have been involved into the fishing. And this is something which we can clearly see. And he cannot understand the carbon and issues related to that. But he said, I can clearly see a link between changing weather pattern and our livelihood. So they understand. They will like to take action. And I try to explain to them that what you're facing here is not your fault. You are only the sufferers of it. You are the victims without being the cause of it. And that is what we should try to create such confidence, because they will realize that why should I suffer when I'm not responsible for it? And therefore, then they will ask for action, which will be at a national level. Because sufferers are at the local level, but action necessary is at a national level and even at global level. But forget global level action, that we are already working on that. But at least national level action can happen through such grassroots demand that might come, because that we are suffering and we want you to take corrective action. I think that is one way we can really work on it.
Yeah. We would love to work with you and get your thoughts and ideas on, how we can take these ideas forward. Because what we find is that very often we are speaking to the converted rather than people, who need to be, involved in the discussion, involved in the decision making, so that, it can work for them. Exactly as you say. I mean, if the mango crop fails and the fishermen are not able to catch fish for whatever reason, it's a big issue, and we need to work on it and find solutions. But I really do appreciate your thoughts on this, on these actions, and let's keep up our discussion, in a way that we can find solutions, as you suggest, work with grassroots organizations, work in the local language, etc. I think these are really critical and important issues. So it brings us to the end of our half an hour conversation. But I really do appreciate your spending time with us today, Suresh, and your vast experience and of handling so many different portfolios in government, is really critical and important for us as we go forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And hope to meet up with you soon, despite all these COVID times, of course.
No.
And so back to you, Madhav and OP.
Thank you, Mr. Godrej. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Prabhu, for giving us this time. I remember the first 10 years or 12 years ago when I first came to you to speak about bus rapid transit, and the inputs you had for us were very valuable. I think your inputs continue to be extremely valuable as we sort of scale up the issues at these sort of ways in which we respond to this massive problem of challenge of climate change that we all face. I think we as an organization have really made an attempt to really increase our footprint. So we now work across almost 50 or 60 locations across India. But I think and trying to work much more in local languages. But I think what you're suggesting is at a much bigger scale. And I think we'll definitely draw inspiration from what we have said. And I think on ways in which how we can contribute, collaborate on that effort. So thank you once again for your time. Thank you, Mr. Godrej. Thank you, OP sir, for all of your support. And have a good evening, all of us. Thank you. We'll close the session now.
Thank you.
All the best. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.